of this dance is the well-known two-step.
I hear a voice in my shadows. See your face in the crowd.
I smell hip-hop and I want some. I spy with my little eye 2 turntables, spin a record so fly.
The music of this dance is the well-known two-step.
Don't say goodbye. Don't make
And welcome, g'day, point blank students everywhere. My name is MPA. You can call me MPA. My name is Michael Adams. I'm the Director of Training and Development for Waves Audio. Basically what that means is I train the trainers. I write a lot of the curriculum. So things like SoundGrid certifications, that comes from me. A lot of the events that we do at Waves kind of like come out of my head. I also host most of the large online events. So if you've watched any of the Waves Open sessions, which happen every Wednesday here on the online world on waves.com, you'll see me hosting those as well. So I have a gambit of jobs at Waves, but today that job includes talking to you guys about plugins. Specifically, what I want to do is I want to talk. Wow, Australia's up early. I want to talk to you about using a few plugins really effectively. When I'm talking to my assistant, or I'm talking to interns, or as we call them in Australia, work experience people, I like to refer to it as mixing in the box while you're thinking outside the box. So we're going to talk about some plugins. We're going to talk about the best ways of using them. We're going to use a few plugins in very different ways to what it actually says they should be used for in the manual. And g'day San Francisco, Puerto Rico, hello nerd people, hello from the UK. Who else we got? One MPA, learn how to scroll. India's in the house, Colombia's in the house. I was about to say there's somebody in Miami, Florida, but it's me. Anyway, so as you've probably seen, I can see the chat here. And so that way, if any questions come up, I should be able to see them as long as you all don't type too fast. Okay, so let's move over to this screen right here. Welcome to my Pro Tools world. Welcome to my Pro Tools session. Netherlands and Nepal and Manchester and Argentina and Mexico. Damn, you guys are everywhere. Very cool, very cool. Okay. So this is a session. Now, just a couple of small pieces of information about this specific recording session. I actually created this recording session specifically for Waves, and the keyboard is different. So let's see if that works. Yes, my keyboard fell apart, so I'm getting used to a new keyboard. And it amazes me how a keyboard spacing messes you up. So okay, so this recording session I created from scratch, basically for the purpose of demos like this. Now there's a few things that make this specific session interesting. Firstly, it is a perfect mixture of samples from Splice and other places. It's vocals that I recorded, a couple of guitar parts that I recorded with different players. The drums are out of a VI and from a live player, and a couple of other things. So it's a perfect mix, and it's a perfect storm. So let us dig in. First things first, let me talk quickly about session organization. Now, a lot of people will tell you that you have to organize your sessions in specific ways, and it's a good idea to do this way or that way or this way or that way. So what I wanted to do was show you exactly how chaotic some of my sessions are when it comes to where things are. The only thing I do, I don't really color code because it doesn't work for me, but what I do is I start with the most important parts of the instrumentation up front, and then move it on down. Now, a lot of that means for me, where does something turn up in the session? So, you know, I've got a pad and I've got a guitar, a bass guitar, and I've got a drum loop and I've got a piano that are through the entire song. So those four things are right up the top of the session where I can see them. And I like them there because it's where I know where they are going to be. So this is my kitchen. So make sure you keep your session organized your way. Remember, guys, this is your kitchen. It's nobody else's. Make sure that you can work in it. So if you want your vocals up the top, then put them up the top, but be consistent about it. The way I'm consistent about it is my workflow is all about priorities. It's about what's most important in the session to me and where the main instruments are, so I always know where to get them. So I just scroll up and they're there. So now let's just have a quick listen. I know you might have heard a bit of this on the way through. Greetings from Spain, Austria, Kenya, Norway, Los Angeles. I think the closest one of you guys is in Los Angeles, and that's Dennis, I think. Probably not Dennis, is it? It's probably pronounced something different. But anyway. All right, here we go. So let's press play on this session and have a quick listen.
The music of this dance is the well-known two-step.
Don't say goodbye. Don't make me cry. Oh, fading again, but I won't give in to you. The world is in your eyes. The world is in your eyes.
New singer coming in.
I hear a voice in the shadows. See your face in the crowd.
Okay, enough of that. So let's go back through a few things. So first things first, let's take a look at some plugins. Okay, so what do we have in here? For someone who works at Waves, a lot of people say you don't use as many plugins as I thought you would. And I'm like, nope, I don't. We have this. Let me just unnarrow it for you. Okay, there we go. So this pad here, this pad called Altair, this is great song. Thank you, Trish. It came completely out of my head. Altair. Altair is the name of a pad that I used to have on a keyboard many years ago. I do not have the keyboard anymore, but I recreated that pad with a VI, so I always call it Altair. This pad is through the entire track, so it's right up top. And I'm using two plugins, which we will get to. Firstly, I'm using a Brickwall limiter on it, and then I'm using a one knob plugin. Now, then I've got a loop that I'm also using an L3 on, and then a one band EQ, and then another one knob plugin. Blah, blah. For my bass, I've got Submarine, which is subharmonic bass, and I've got Shep's Omni channel, another Shep's Omni channel, and a one band EQ. listen to, I'll get to that. I was recording Natasha Benningfield and her brother Daniel the other day, so we were doing a recording session. I can get to that later on. Okay. One thing you will see in a lot of this is a lot of Q1s and Q2s. So a lot of 1-band EQs and 2-band EQs. And even if it's 10-band EQ, a lot of the time, I'm only using 2 bands. So let's take a look at why first. So let's go to my piano, and if I start staring up, it's because I've spent half the day on a PC, and now I'm back on a Mac, and I'm getting my buttons the wrong way around. So let's go back to, there we go. Right. So here's my piano. All right. So there's my piano. So let's... Is Pro Tools my preferred DAW? Yes, it is, and I'll talk while I work. I got dragged kicking and screaming into the digital world via Pro Tools in 1994 or 5, I'm just so comfortable with it. It's like a pair of shoes. Is it the best one? Not always, but it is a really good one still. So the piano with nothing on it sounds a bit like this. There's nothing wrong with this piano. Nothing wrong at all. However, this piano, if I put it back in the mix, let's take it somewhere a bit busy. Where's the piano gone?
The world is in your eyes. World.
There it is. So, a couple of things. Firstly, let's take it to Q1. I cannot tell you enough that high pass and low pass are literally your best friends in a mix, and it doesn't matter what kind of mix. It's like one day I'll be mixing angry rap, and the next day I'll be mixing a ballad, and it doesn't matter, because what it comes down to is every single bit of every single song in any kind of genre, it's all about frequencies. So when it comes to giving everything you want in your mix space, a high pass and a low pass are literally, if we're talking the kitchen analogy, which I do a lot, these are your knives. These are your everyday knives that you use for chopping veggies and cutting the fat off meat. So by default, and again, I'm Australian, so I like to kind of cut the edges off things and, you know, smooth things off a bit. One of the things I like to do is I like to create defaults of what I do a lot. So with a 1-band EQ, this is my default. Now, how do you do that? Really easy. So set as default preset, okay? Do you want to overwrite it? Yes, I'm doing that because literally it was mine beforehand. So that way, every time I open a 1-band, it's going to come up with this specific high pass, and it just makes your life easier. So now, what's it actually doing in this piano? Let's go back. It's kind of subtle in this case, but it's definitely there. Any frequency that isn't relevant to the specific instrument in the mix, when it comes to what else is in the mix, you need to get rid of it. So use these plugins like there is no tomorrow. There we go. So all the lower mids, gone, because I don't need them. Why don't I need them? Because I have a bass. Now if I put that back here, it's not going to make a huge difference yet, but you're taking bits and pieces off everywhere until you get the mix the way you want. Now, one of the important things here before I go on is to remind you that when it comes to mixing your own music, you have a say about what kind of genre it is. When you're working out in the world, a lot of the time you're going to be working on stuff that you don't necessarily like. And that's when you have to really, really fine-tune the art of going, okay, this is just a big pile of frequencies and I'm going to make it work. Because that's all it is, guys. It's frequencies, and the client is nearly always right. You can nudge them in the right direction if you think strongly about something, but remember, it's all about frequency. Spitfire has a lot of very good orchestral libraries. Oh, that's a whole conversation going on that doesn't need me. There you go. Welcome. Okay, so here we have, there's my one part, my high pass, my one band. Now, this is another plugin that I use a lot. And it's a plugin that I like showing students, especially because it has a few features that are super, super powerful when it comes to learning about the art of compression, gating, de-essing, EQing, what a preamp does, filters, etc. And one of them is in play right here. Now, before we go into exactly what I'm doing here, you'll notice up the top of this plugin, there's a little button here called Focus. Firstly, it's the name of a really good hip-hop producer, but in this case, it's not. In this case, this button turns on highlights. And what that means is in the preset that you're using, it will highlight any specific parameters that are the ones that will make the most amount of difference in the preset you're messing with when you're actually tweaking stuff. So that comes in super handy. So I'm going to save that, put it into preset menu as MPA bass. It's a fretless, isn't it? Yeah, fretless. I'm doing it in all caps because I'm yelling. And then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go Andrew Sheps, and let's pick a bass one, shall we? Bass DI. Beautiful. All right. All right. So in this case here, you'll see this one has different parameters in it. So again, focus off. You're on your own. You keep the focus button on, and we have it on by default. It actually tells you what you need to do. So if you go over here, let's go to that. So it's saying, so depending on what actually is going on with the bass, if there were some frequencies that we need to get out, that's there. Compression, we're in opt. So that's there, and then bypass. I picked the most subtle thing. You know what it is? It's the wrong plugin. That's why. It's been a long day. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Even I'm maybe this perfect. I was looking at the wrong one. So here we go. So now in this case here, let's unbypass it, and I'm going to go back to my clear bass DI. Let's go bass DI. And let's take the attack down. Release up. There we go. Now also I'm going to push up a bit of saturation. Yeah, keep that on. Don't need the gate. Now here's another beautiful thing about this specific plugin. Hear the difference? Hear that grunt? That's brilliant. That's what makes a bass.
Is it your eyes?
Let's go back a bit.
Don't say goodbye. Don't make me
that growl is what makes the bass stand out. So you want that. Now, initially, the main parameters I really tweaked here were the ones in blue. So you can turn it on, turn it off. But it's a good thing to have them on. Now, the other plugin that I use quite a lot is this little baby here. I'm not going to talk about it much because it's not really what I would call one of my desert island plugins. But when it comes to adding bass, it does add a ton. Now, if I press solo and bypass it, you see I'm not actually adding a ton here. It's like, it's nearly a rumble. You're not going to hear it unless you've got decent speakers or you've got a good pair of headphones in. But I can hear it enough that it just adds a teeny bit of body. Now, one of the cool things about this is because you can, with a plugin like this, take it all the way to wet, what you can do is you can make some adjustments while it's wet and then pull the mix back. So this little knob here says dynamics, which means basically I'm adding compression. I'm just going to just crunches it a bit more. Now I can go back. If it's too dramatic when you're soloed, then it's wrong. You know why? Because there is not one time any of you, well, maybe you guys, but not in the normal world, you're not driving in the car with your mates and a song comes on and you're all singing to it and then somebody goes, man, I wonder what that bass guitar sounded like soloed. It just doesn't happen. So what we do is we get into a mistake of listening to things soloed and we get too absorbed in how something sounds by itself. So you've got to make sure that, yes, do a bit of tweaking soloed, but then put it back in the mix. What are these headphones? These specific headphones are literally the ones that came with my phone, and I'll explain why in a second.
Don't make me cry. Oh.
It's subtle, but I hear it. Okay, so there we go there. So no soloing, high pass and low passes, and yes, that is a really good. Should you always cut off frequencies below 20 hertz and above 20,000? Amanda, I'm never going to say always to anything in music because it doesn't really, it's not specifically about those specific frequencies. It's about how it reacts to the rest of the things in the mix. You actually have to, because remember, this is theater of the mind. You have to decide whether or not those guidelines, and they're good guidelines, by the way, if those guidelines for cutting frequencies is going to work for the specific piece of music you're working on. So right now, what am I cutting? And I do a lot of this by ear. It's like I'm cutting anything under there, basically. And by rule of thumb, I don't look at the numbers. What I do, though, is I will do a bit drastic. I'll take it drastic, too drastic, and I'll pull it back. And I will look anywhere but the plugin screen. So right now, I'm creepily looking at you guys. And I'm trying to find that spot where... See, now I've taken out more, but if I put the bass in, it gives it more room. Now, if I put those frequencies back in, suddenly it takes from the bass. Messy, 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 messy. So use your ears. Try and avoid looking at the screen too much. And especially when you're making a change, a simple one like that, just deciding what frequency, look anywhere but at the screen. I have a habit that I started when I was, still early days in digital. So I got into it really early of turning off the screen, because coming from, I came from a big Tascam console and 2-inch tape multi-track. and you're always staring at the console, but suddenly you're staring at a screen, and your eyes make decisions for you that your ears should be. So even when it's something as simple as a low pass, make sure that you are staring anywhere but at the screen while you're actually deciding what's enough and what's too much. Okay. All right, so we've got bass, we've got guitar, we've added a bit of subharmonic bass. So far, we've done nothing groundbreaking, but I'm about to fix that. So now let's go to, I've got some stuff prepared here. We have, which one is this one? Not that one. Is it this one? There we go. Okay, cool. So here we have this. So this is a sample, right? That's how it came. You can see it's a sample. It says so. So I got this from Splice. And one of the things about samples is, and it's something that I have to keep an eye on the chat, just sure. Okay. So one of the things about samplers and samples is these samples come ready for your satisfaction. So they are compressed, they are EQ'd, they are mixed, they are mastered, they are ready to go. Now, one of the things I come across a lot is people going, why does my track sound dirty? Or why is there a noise floor there? Or why am I hearing hiss? Or why does that sample not sound as good as it should do? A lot of the time, it has to do with what you're actually doing to them. Now, one of the best plugins you can use on a sample is None. So in this case here, I'm doing a couple of small things, but for a specific effect. But if I take these plugins off, so there you go. It doesn't need a high pass because it's already got something on it. There's no low frequencies there. So I'm using Audio Track, which is literally one of the oldest plugins. I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm going to take a rough stab in the dark and say this plugin is older. If I remember rightly, we brought this out in like 1993 or 94, I think. Anyway, it used to look like this, and now it looks like this. It's a very, very cool plugin. Okay, so what am I doing with it? Let's have a listen. I'm sharpening it. That's the way I like to think of it. So I've put a dip there. I've done a bit of a curve there, and I've taken that up. So if I turn that frequency off, that's the part that makes the difference.
See your face in the crowd.
The other two are to back it up. But now, one of the things that I know about is, may not be so technical, but it's also one of the things that's got me through my career, is, let's turn off Nicole for a second. So, turn it off. It's completely gone away. Let me make it more dramatic. Just gives it something. It's like boom. Now if I bypass it, it doesn't stick out from the other piano. The lesson from this one: find the frequency space that isn't being used. Think of it as a stage. I don't know about you guys, but I love watching theater. And musical theater or theater, doesn't matter, as long as I'm in the audience eating popcorn and watching, I'm cool. Now, one of the things that I learnt from being in theater as a kid through to now is stage placement of actors and performers is exactly the same as stage placement of your sounds in audio. So when you're looking at a plugin like Audio Track that literally can be used on absolutely anything, find the frequency that lets that instrument sit in the mix without fighting something else. Like a piano has a specific kind of group of frequencies. It has the same kind of group of frequencies. But in this case, there are two completely different kinds of piano. One of them is laid back and da 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 da, and then there's this one that's kind of like, you know, one of the Muppets playing it really angrily, kind of like Fozzie from the Muppets hitting the keys. So, and you want it to stand out. So find the frequencies that it's going to stand out in. So in this case, it's the higher end of the spectrum, and it's just that initial hit. I don't need anything else. I don't need to compress it much. I just need it to sit there. So this plugin here is literally just a bit of EQ, a bit of compression. It's helping me get what I need. You can do this with pretty much any Waves plugin or any other compressor channel strip, but it's a really good one, this specific one. It's really old, but it's brilliant. It's a great plugin. It's in pretty much every single bundle. It is in every bundle, I think, from Silver Bundle upwards. Okay, now, but if we take a listen to this one, so here's the Frozen bass loop. You'll notice that I'm not doing anything to it, because I really don't need to. It's like all I needed to do was adjust the level in the mix. Same with this. All I needed to do here was, let's put it back for a second. It's muted in this section. There we go. So that's a strum. It's just a strum sample. So now all I'm doing to that is putting an effect on it, and that effect sounds like, just spreads it out a bit. But one of the things you'll hear, again, let's go back to that high pass. So come on. Where's it going? When I'm doing demos, sometimes I lose stuff. This is one of those times. So let's just go. Come on. There it is. So I have H delay, which is in ping pong mode. And then I have Renaissance Verb. Now, Renaissance Verb is probably one of the simplest reverbs you could possibly use. Now, this specific version of this, in this specific reverb, again, has been around for a really long time. One of the things I really love about this reverb is, let's go MPA Beautiful Hall. There's the EQ for you. So hear how tinny it is? It's like it adds reverb, but it doesn't add any of the same frequencies. One of the things you got to remember, guys, with frequencies and reverbs is if you're adding a reverb, you are literally going, oh my God, I love this sound so much, I'm going to repeat it thousands of times over the next few seconds. And that can muddy up your mix. So when you're doing a reverb, either put a high pass or a low pass after it, or do one in the EQ. In this case, I just wanted this area so that just nice and simple. It's not doing too much. It's just there. So Okay, so let's go back to make sure I press the right key. Not that one. This one? Oh, it's this. Is it this one? There we go. Okay. All right, beautiful. So now I need to store. Beautiful. Okay, so now we've done that. So we've got a lot of high pass and a lot of low pass. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the kick. No, I just want the kick. Here we go. Come on. Let's unsolo. Kick. All right. One of the beautiful things about kick drums when they're actually played is bleed. The same with snares. So I'm going to do the same here with the kick and the snare. And there's one plugin that I like using a lot on any of this stuff, and it's called MV2. Now, this plugin, parametric or convolution reverb. That's actually a fairly good question. Now, as far as reverbs go, I'm fairly fine with not using convolution reverbs. It's like I rarely use them solely because it's a preference. It's like for me, a reverb in a mix, when it's something in a mix, it's adding a small amount of effect. It's not adding a huge dramatic effect. Unless it's something that's really open, like a really open, you know, very dynamic acoustic mix, or a piece of orchestra music, or something where there are a few instruments and you have to create a space of a room. Then IR convolution reverbs, impulse responses and convolution reverbs are hugely amazing, because you can create this huge space within people's minds, because that's what it's all about, creating a space for people in their head. Okay, back to this plugin, MV2. So MV2 is a high-level, low-level compressor. What this does is it brings up your low-level signal and it pushes down your high level. It's the simplest possible term. You have to mess with this plugin. I use this on pretty much everything that needs compression. Why? Because it's the best edit that I never heard, which means that it does compression. It does what I ask it to, but it doesn't make it sound like I'm compressing the bejesus out of it. And by the way, that term, the best edit I never heard, my mentor, when I was his coffee boy, when I first started in the industry, that was what he told me all the time. If I can hear the edit, then you failed. So it's got to be the best edit I never heard. Okay, so what do I want to do with this kick? I want to bring out the bleed. I want to fatten it a bit, but I want to bring out that bleed. So, all right. All right, so now... All right, now you could be mistaken at this point in time for thinking that the only thing that I've done is make it louder. So this is one of those times where you have to really, really, really output volume match. So let's bring the output down. Okay, so that's before. Before. After. Let's go a bit more dramatic. Before. After. If you can't hear the difference, then so what we're doing is we're making it bigger, so it sounds like it's being in a bigger room, but it also makes it sound like it's been remiked. This plugin can work wonders on vocals. It can work wonders on any kind of guitar. It can work wonders on any kind of acoustic instrument. It doesn't work as well on synths and pads because that's too varying. If you've ever played a synthesizer or a pad, like a big swelling pad, into a DAW, you see that the level tends to go up and down sometimes and be a bit wavy. So this doesn't work quite as well on those, but when it comes to something acoustic and real and played by a human being, this can kick ass. So in this case here, let me bypass it and okay, so let's just do all the drums. Okay, so now I'm going to do something that I've talked about before. He keeps on crapping on about one band EQs. Guess what? I'm going to give you another one. So now low pass. So let's go with that. One of the things that a compressor can do like this is it can also compress and bring out a lot of the real high-end parts of it, and you don't want it to bring out too much of them. Subtle, but again, it's like that little bit of extra that I don't want there, and you can fix it with a one band. So kicks disappeared. There it is again. All right, beautiful. So now let's put MV2 on something else. Now I'm going to put MV2 on... that's nice. Thanks, Trish. Appreciate it. Let's put it on this guitar loop. No, let's put it... see, I really am winging it right now. Let's put it on this guitar loop here. So it's this one. Let's do this one. Okay, so MV2 dynamics. There we go. MV2, and let's. Volume match it. What it has the tendency to do is bring out frequencies in your instrument that were there all along, but just need making more present. When I say it sounds like it remixes things, it really does. And you can use this on pretty much anything. So let's see what it does. Let's bring it up just a tad. Hear those mid frequencies getting brought out? Okay, so now let's go and find where this comes in, which I think is about there. There we go. Okay, so let's do it without it.
Don't say goodbye. Don't make me cry. Fading again, but I won't give in to you.
Doesn't have to be much, but you have to be able to hear it. So making sure that you listen to stuff in the mix while you go. So far we haven't really used that much. We've used let's see, what have we used? We've used this one, which I haven't got to yet. We've used a one-band EQ. We've used the Shep's Omni channel, MV2, another audio track. Vitamin is another plugin I have to get to, but you'll see I'm using a lot of EQs, like, and a lot of MV2s. Ah, here you go, MV2 on the drum room. So the drum room is something that I created. So here we go. Let's... Before I move on to what I'm using the L3 for. So, when these drums were recorded, there was a drum room, a couple of mics, so, you know, higher than everything else, recording everything to give it a bit of a big feel. It didn't really create the atmosphere that I wanted, so when these drums were recorded, there was a drum room, a couple of mics, so, you know, higher than everything else. I was nearly looping myself back then. That would have been bad. Okay, so let's go back to this drum room here. So then I put this plugin on here. Push it up. Now, there's one more thing. So now if you put the drums back in, now you've got a drum room. Bypassing it. We've just created a drum room with one plugin. So now the other thing that you can do is you can go, okay, right, so I've just added more frequencies in this, so let's make sure that I don't add too many of them. So let's do this trick again. So keep the drums rolling. Too much. Back again. You don't want to take out too much, but you want to make sure that when you're compressing and you're squeezing things together, that MP2 it's a compressor expander, but it does it in a really, really good way. Another question from the gold, is it in the gold bundle? Yes, damn it, it is in the gold bundle, which is a really good thing. Group hug. Okay, so that's what I use that for. Now, so again, so MV2, remember MV2, amazing plugin. And now, how am I using one knob plugins in this? Some people say the one knob plugins are cheating. Some people say that the one knob plugins are too easy and they do it all for you. You know what I say? I say that in times where the music industry has really turned into time is money, you really want to make sure that you use every single trick you can and utilize all of it as much as you can. And one knob plugins, there's a few of the one knobs that I use religiously, and one of them is called Pumper. Now, okay, so let's go through what we've got here. So this is my pad, right? So this pad is called Altair, so that's one note. So it's multiple notes at the same time, but you hit it with one key. Now, one knob Pumper is automated, and here's why. So if I go, okay. So if I put this in the mix, I'm going to take out the vocals. So let's take Alana and Nicole out of the mix for a second. I don't want to be rude to them, but you know, they get in the way right now. So here we have Chandon Recording Studio. LOL dot I dot 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 I dot. Okay. Okay, so that's the first bit of the pad. Sounds fine. However, you'll see that one knob Pumper has now come in. I'm just gonna deactivate it for a second. So when the pad comes back in, bit too busy. Let's take out the L3. Not really busy enough for what I was after. So what one knob Pumper does is something kind of cool. Gives me a bit of a ducking effect. Now, basically, this is exactly that. This is what we used to call sidechain ducking, and a lot of people still do. It's like, especially in dance music, it's like the kick drum will be, linked to the pad so that when the pad comes in, it doesn't get in the way of the kick. What this plugin does is it does it for you, so it makes it a lot easier to get to when it comes to things like that. Now, I automate with this plugin a ton, because it gives me the ability to just get things out of the way. So even down here, it's like I'm using the same plugin on this loop here. So that's, I actually call it my Peter Gabriel drum loop, because it reminds me of the loop from In Your Eyes. So what this does, so if I put this back in the mix, duck it a bit, it brings in just the right amount feel-wise of offbeats that kind of adds to the mix without making it too busy. So the one knob pumper plugins just add something to me. So what do we got? We've got the Q1, we've got MB2, we've got one knob pumper, we've got Shep's Omni channel, and I use Shep's Omni channel a lot. And I love the presets. Now, one of the other things I love about the Shep's Omni channel, by the way, is the fact that you can actually add a plugin within a plugin. So let's go here and go Hammond, because that's the piano that I really like. And then I'm going to add an MV2. So let's add an MV2. And I'm just going to... no, I'm not going to bother with a preset. I'm just going to... This is what I call making it a bit closer. Kind of like 8-ish and 7.5-ish. And then pull down to about -4. That's how much I use this plugin. So now, if I listen to my piano, brings it out a bit more. So now, bring that down a bit.
The music of this dance is the well-known two-step.
Now, here's another thing which I haven't got to yet. I've been jumping around a bit. Limiters. The L3 is one of the plugins that pretty much is discussed when the term loudness wars come up. And the... Yes, is it linked to the BPM? Yes, Tony, it is. Anything with any of our plugins that has a BPM feature is linked to the actual BPM of the track. So in this case, it's 98, I think. Top right hand, yes, 98. But if I go back to that quickly, you also have the option here of creating what kind of rate you want. So, you know, if I'm looking at the pad, I've got quarter note, so it's like that. Whereas if I'm on one knob pumper for my loop, all I want is those two little toms. So it's well, don't do that. Don't do that. It's a half note, so if I made it a quarter, it wouldn't really work. It's a nice effect, but it's not what I'm after. So yes, connected to the actual session BPM. So this plugin, the limiter. A limiter is something that most people think, you can put it on the master, or you can use it for mastering on your stereo bus or a 2-track. We came up with a low latency version of this about 8-9 years ago. Actually longer, nearly 10. And I use it in tracks a lot if I just want to flatten the crap out of things and make them a teeny bit louder than they were. Now, this is a really soft pad. So let me just go to default and show you how this plugin works. So let's find the bit that doesn't have the annoying ducking thing, so it's going to annoy you. Tony, you are welcome. That's what I'm here for. Okay, so if you're using the L1, the L2, or the L3, the main first 2 steps or 3 steps are exactly the same. They have this little link in between the threshold and the out ceiling. And when you grab it, it pulls the threshold and the out ceiling down at the same time. So as I pull it down, you're not going to hear a thing. So I'm going to do it until I hear degradation in the sound. And attenuation. You can just see attenuation now. That's how quiet it is. There's degradation. Don't want that. Back up a bit. That's enough attenuation. So now what I have the ability to do is leave the threshold there. So I can get a lot more out of a sound without really kind of like just bunching up the fader. I can make it fatter. So that's probably a bit too much. Yeah, that's better. So this is a cool plugin. This one is the Ultra, which means literally it's just limiting. There is also a Multi, which is one where you actually get to choose which frequencies have how much amount of limiting on them. So we can go through that another. Okay, so I use this to fatten things up. I use this to make things bigger and fatter when I don't really want a compressor. I don't really want to compress it. I just want to make it kind of like lock together a bit more. So it works really well on those kind of pads. Now, all through this, I've used pretty much 2 or 3 of exactly the same plugins. The Qs, etc. And then H-Delay and Reverb. Now, when it comes to my delays and my reverbs, I tend to use the things that I know I'm really good at. And again, it's not because I'm lazy, it's because I know I can make it sound the way I want. But if I go to the one thing we haven't dealt with yet, which is my vocals, here we go. Nicola and Alana. So let's go to Alana. Hope you are enjoying this great masterclass from Michael. Yes, I am. I am enjoying it. Thank you. I don't know who he is, but he talks funny and he seems okay. In a dark room, talking to himself. Okay. So here we have my vocals. So now I'm not doing a ton here. I'm using Shep's Omni channel and I use it a ton. I really do. I love this plugin. Now, the preset I'm using is, if you take a look at any Waves preset, if there is a little asterisk after the name, it means you've actually tweaked the preset. And it's not the same as the original. If there isn't one there, then it means that you haven't. I like this preset a lot. This one, Vocal 3, Present. It works for me. So, and let's just go and have a listen to her. I'm going to take all the settings off. So let's have a listen to Alana.
Don't say goodbye.
Bypass it.
Don't make me cry. Oh.
Now, I had to slow her down because she sang it too fast initially. So I use Omni channel Ernesto in a lot of tracks, yes. The Omni channel is probably one of the most flexible channel strips I've ever come across. The 3 or 4 plugins I use a lot are Omni channel, MV2, Q1, and the L series. Those are my Desert Island plugins. So what this plugin is specifically doing in this case, though, is just putting a bit of a sharp edge on the topper end of her voice. So, come on.
Don't say goodbye. Don't make me cry. Oh.
And taking it away from focusing on those low frequencies. So now if I put it back in the mix.
Don't say goodbye.
No, that doesn't work for me.
Don't make me cry. Oh.
So that's the first step, is working out what frequencies are going to work. But that's only half the battle. One of the biggest things for me in any of my sessions is working out exactly what I want to do and making sure it's there before I actually get to it. Again, it's the kitchen analogy. If I'm cooking, and we Aussies cook a lot, or at least I do, I like to make sure everything's out where I want it to. These headphones, okay, Max, settle. These headphones are from my Samsung Note 10, and actually no, they're not they're from the Samsung Note 9, because the one that came with the Note 10 has a USB-C connector on it. But they're great little headphones. They're made by AKG, and the reason I like them, while you guys are being pushy on the headphones, teasing, is because I like to spend a lot of time listening on the medium that people are going to be listening to the tracks on. People don't sit in front of hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of speakers listening to music on a daily basis. It doesn't happen. People listen in these things. They listen in their headphones. They listen on their clock radios. They listen on their MacBook, on their laptop speakers. They listen in the car. You have to make sure something sounds good in the medium that people are going to be, eating up your content. So these things are actually really quite good little headphones. Have I mixed on them? Yes. Will I do the final mix on them? No. But I do like the way they sound, because it's I know what to expect in them. So, okay, there you go. Great tricks, thanks Michael, and point blanks for this. Tuska Musica, you welcome. Okay, so let's talk about effects. So here we have my vocal. Now the vocal sounds fine, but you'll see that I can make it sound a lot better with some effects. And you can see that I have all the vocals going to one effects bus, so which is down here. There we go. Okay, Vox effects. What do I have? So I have 4 plugins. I have a delay, which goes into a reverb on the same channel. Yep. And then that reverb goes into a low pass. And that low pass goes into pumper, which is automated. Now, put all that together, and what you end up with is something that your vocals can breathe in, but something that also adds something substantial to the track. So if we go back to my vocals, let's find... Okay, cool. So I'm going to put some stuff up here and make sure it's... Put this under my face. There you go. You don't need to see much of pumper. Then I'll put this here and this there. Okay, so now you get to see everything that's going on, pretty much. Pretty much. Okay. Did I lose a plugin? I lost a plugin. Oh. What did I lose? I lost the Q10. Eh. See, getting old. Now I don't even know what screen it's on. It's disappeared. That's fine. I'm going to get rid of it and put it back on. Okay. If you can't find it, it's real simple. Do it again. Okay, I actually can use a Q1 for. Come on. Come down. Killing me. Screw it. Right. That. I have no idea why I can't access it. It's about there. Okay, cool. So here we have the vocals. And there they are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to this, okay, and I'm going to bypass all of the effects channels for a second. So let's go.
Don't say goodbye. Don't make me cry. Oh.
Okay, so now let's put them back in for her quickly.
Don't say goodbye. Don't make me cry. Oh.
An effect is only an effect as long as it adds something that is an effect that you want. If it becomes so run-of-the-mill and so consistent that people get used to it, it is no longer an effect, it is the norm. So utilize your automation and change things up a bit. So this is also why I have a delay, this delay here, going into a reverb, going into this EQ that I can't seem to access and work out where the hell it is on my screen and get to the top of it. And then going into a ducker, which is automated. So, because it's going to add things, and that delay into a reverb is super cool. You really need to try it. Let's take a listen to that again.
Don't say goodbye. Don't make me cry. Oh.
Okay, so that's the first thing. So that delay going into that reverb. It doesn't matter which ones you use, but these ones work really, really well. The other thing about the reverb is, remember, again, I'm utilizing the EQ in the reverb as well, and I'm making sure that I'm not just repeating the same audio, I'm actually controlling the frequency of the echoes so that it has space to mix. So now we get into this wonderful phase over here when Nicole comes in, where the duck starts to come in. So now you can see where it was turned all the way off there. Okay, so let's go back to about here. Watch the ducker on the right-hand side and have a listen to what's going on. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my vocal effects, and I'm just going to turn up the fader a bit so that you really get the full effect of this. But again, this is one of those things that when it comes down to getting the most out of the fewest amount of plugins, this is one of those things that can help you a ton.
Fading again, but I won't give in to you. The world is in your eyes. The world is in your eyes.
See how I'm automating that pumper?
I hear a voice in the shadows.
That pumper is super cool on those long attacks. I mean, those long delays and releases, because it adds an effect, and it is so simple. It's so simple. Okay, so now I'm going to down and get rid of a few things. That from, I'd love to know how to access this damn queue that's hidden itself at the top of my screen. Let's just delete it for a second. Okay. Okay, so now that one's done. Okay, let's move that there. I really don't know how that's even possible. What's it done? It's nowhere to be seen. Cray cray. Okay. Steps Omni is awesome. Yes, it is. Okay, so now let's take another quick look at what I'm doing session-wise here when it comes to my organization. So I have a vocal effects. That's on Nicole's vocals and it's on Alana's vocals. Then I have a drum bus. So if I go back to here and squeeze everything up. So there's everything right there. Okay. Come on. Wish I could get rid of that damn plugin. Okay. You're going to have to deal with one knob pumper being stuck off the screen for the rest of this webinar. So now we've got the drum bus. So
See your face.
drums. Then I have a vocal mix. Then I have a music mix.
Don't say goodbye, no. Baby, don't say goodbye, no.
And then it all goes into a Submaster. Now, two things about doing a vocal mix and a music mix. The first one is the vocal mix and music mix gives you the ability to actually put a compressor or an EQ. Tony, I am not touching my screen resolution during a live stream. OBS doesn't like that very much. Good idea though. Now, it gives me the ability that if I need to do a final tweak on something that's broader, like over the music mix or the vocal mix, I can. One of the things I like to do a lot, in this case, you'll see in the music mix, I've actually got the F6. It's not really doing very much. It's just adding a teeny bit of a mid, so I'm going to actually change it for something else. I'm going to change it for another plugin that you've seen before. I'm going to change it for this one right here. So now, one of the cool things about this is it gives you the ability to kind of like fatten something up. One of the parts about it though is that you have to make sure that when you're doing this, it's only kind of working for the stuff that you need it to. Remember, this is kind of like a low level and high level. So it's bringing up the smaller dynamics, the quieter dynamics, and it's putting a big fist and pushing stuff down from the high end. So in this case here, what I want is actually, let's bring the vocals back in. There we go.
Fading again, but I won't give in to you.
You have to make sure that it doesn't add too much when things start to kick in. So
The world is in your eyes.
now if you're paying attention, I'm going to bypass it for 20 seconds and I'm going to add it for 20 seconds. And what you'll hear is, what you should hear anyway, is that the lower mids, well, the mids, the kind of not low mids, but the lower mids are just made a teeny and a bit fatter. So let's bypass it first.
The world is in your eyes.
music. Yes, in a second.
Is in your eyes.
Okay, now back to that same spot, and I'll put it in.
The world is in your eyes.
Bypassing it again.
The world is in your eyes.
This little compressor can get you out of so many messes. It just works. So please, I encourage you, mess around with this one. Now, the question was, Tusker Musica asked about the H-Comp hybrid, where, when, and why. It's actually a good question. So let's let's bypass the 6, and let's H-Comp. Okay. So, hybrid, H-Comp, hybrid. So this stands for, basically, well, it's H stands for hybrid, but it's literally, it's a mix of analog modeling and digital technology. So the H-Delay, the H-Comp, and the H-Reverb, the H-Q, they all take a bit of both. It's like we've taken the best from both palettes of the analog and the digital world, and we've put them together. Now, one of the cool things about this plugin is you can launch up how much of a mix you want and how much analog you really want in it. One of the best things about this plugin is the fact that it's not just an analog off, it's analog off 1, 2, 3, or 4. By default, this plugin comes on analog 2, and it comes with a completely wet mix and punches all the way down, and ratio is pretty much where I want it, which is there. So now, why would you use this? A couple of reasons. This is really good if you've got a mix for where you're kind of like trying to glue a mix together. It nearly works the same way as an SSL master bus compressor in a way, which is a great plugin in itself. I like using this to glue buses together. So one of my, there it is. So drums pumping. So we're in the drums. So let's listen to my drums. Okay. It compresses the crap out of them. So now, I would probably, and I like the mix wetter. You can also push this a fair way as well, so. And it adds a nice kind of analog distortion. So this is, again, let's put it back in the mix.
Baby, don't say goodbye, no.
I need to go back before Alana. There we go.
The world is in your eyes. The world
Without,
is in your eyes.
with,
I hear a voice in my shadows.
now let's take that same plugin. So let's take that off there and let's put it on the mix. So drum bus or a mix are my two favorite places for this plugin. So let's bypass Abbey Road, which is my current favorite. and let's go down to HComp. And remember, this is on the entire mix. I don't have anything on my master bus. I have everything on my Submaster. I can explain why if you want. And hey, the HComp is still available for free to point blank students only until next week. Grab it. Seriously, grab this plugin. It is amazing, amazing, amazing plugin. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down and we're going to go mastering. There we go. Not a lot, but it adds something.
Baby, don't say goodbye, no.
I'm gonna make it wetter.
Baby, don't say goodbye, no. Baby, my heart is breaking. Scared to lose it, I care.
Take into account the limiter is on.
Baby, I'm shaking. Scared to lose it, I
There's my Submaster, so give it a bit more. It adds a nice warmth. I love this plugin. I like it on anywhere from analog 2 to 4. I very rarely use this plugin if analog is off because I like what it does. I also like it when it's wetter than drier. It's so anywhere from 50 upwards is one of my places that I really like. Now, this is actually a good thing to mention before we leave the. Are you guys good? You guys happy? If any more questions, type them away. Otherwise, I'll go for about another 10 minutes or until people kick me off. So H delay, hybrid delay. Now, one of the things that that a lot of people make mistakes on with this plugin is the feedback knob. So if we're talking about the feedback knob, which one did I open? I opened the one on the vocal effects, yeah, with the plugin that I can't seem to get rid of. So if we go to my vocals, so that's just my VCA right now. So that's there's there we go. Okay, so let's go back to that. Let's go back to
Baby, don't say goodbye, no.
so you hear that feedback? So anything up to 12 o'clock on the feedback on H delay is more feedback. Anything after 12 o'clock is just amplifying whatever feedback there is. So taking your feedback all the way up to there isn't going to help you very much unless you've got a signal that you're very, very specific about. So be very, very careful with how you utilize the feedback in H delay. It's a super cool plugin, but you've got to make sure that you know what you're doing with it. So anything over there is just amplitude. The other thing which I love about this plugin is the high pass and the low pass, because again, it gives me the ability to actually affect what I really want to affect so that I can actually get the sounds that I want. So and one of the things with any kind of delay is if you're just delaying or reverbing exactly the same frequencies as the main source, you are eventually going to end up with mud, and that's not generally something that you want. So, okay. Keeping an eye on questions. Don't see any more yet. Omni is very powerful, yes. Did I miss any? Have to try my demo. Yes, Busher, you definitely should. Great tricks. Thanks, Michael. Okay. One more. And it's not really a plug-in trick, but it's definitely something you should do. Actually, two more. You see, I've got a Submaster and I've got a Master. Now, the Master is turned way up because for some reason I'm not getting a lot of noise out of my streaming software, so I pumped it up. But what I do is I put any compression I have on my Master on my Submaster, which is basically an auxiliary that I create. So if I go into my I/O setup and I go into my buses, you'll see that I have a Submaster set up. I've got a music mix, vocal aux, drum bus, vocal mix. They're all there. So, but the Submaster is what everything goes to, and then the master out. So my Submaster is the fader that I'm looking at all the time. It's the final decision. The master fader is literally a volume knob. So if I am mixing on a plane, or I can turn this up and down, and it's fine. There's not gonna be any processing affected. Whereas one thing that you have to remember about Pro Tools is that if you have a master fader and it's created as a master fader from your track template, so you've gone track, and then you've gone master fader, etc., and then you put a compressor or a limiter or any kind of processing on it, and then you adjust that fader up and down, then you're adjusting the processing through that track, which if you've got a song that's a fade is not really that good a thing to do, because you're adjusting what signal's going into it. And the way I get around that is with my Submaster. Now this plugin here, the Abbey Road TG Mastering Chain, I have one favorite preset that I like to use with this, and it's by my friend Dave Darlington, and it's called Pop Midside Widener. I even created my own version, because that's what you do with presets. You create your own version. Now, presets, and guys, we do a lot of them for you, are all set out with the different artists a lot of the time, or different instrument group. The best thing you can do when you find a preset is literally just go save, put into preset menu as, and put your initials in front of it, because that way it's down the bottom and you know what it is. So in this case, all I did here to adjust what Dave Darlington had done was his makeup gain is higher than I wanted, and his ratio on his mid-side compression was greater than I wanted. So I pulled those down and it gave me the mix that I wanted. But the spreader, which is a major part of this piece of gear that we modeled, is definitely in there. So if I bypass that, it's very subtle. That's pretty much all I'm using this one for right now, is the spreader. And why is that? It's because when I'm mixing or starting a mix, I don't have anything on my master or my Submaster. So depending on what you want to do it. So when I do a mix, I'm literally, there is nothing on that bus, nothing at all. Now, when I've got my mix to a point that I'm happy, then I'll put something, but I don't like mixing into it in case I become falsely complacent about how things are sounding, and something, I move something and then I find that it was a lie all along, because it was all going into this compressor or processor on the master bus. So I like to advise kids to get comfortable with mixing without a safety net. Don't put anything on there. Don't put a plugin on there. Focus on your high passes, your low passes, your simple compressors. Focus on getting the basics down. It's like I'm not using anything intricate in this mix, other than the H delay, the Renaissance Verb, Shep's Omni channel, MV2, and Q1. There's only a couple of other plugins that I'm using. I think I've got Vitamin and GTR somewhere, but other than that, it's pretty much it. Yeah, there's Vitamin, and I'm using Vitamin on a pad because it's got a really nice spready effect. Bypass it. See what it does to it. I love this plugin. In Australia we say Vitamin. I think in the UK you say Vitamin as well. So, but in America where I live now, I have to say Vitamin. So I use very simple plugins, and I get to know how to do many things with them. One of the last things I will show you is something I like to do a lot on my snares. Let's go to the snare and let's go Arvox. Now, not sure if you're familiar with Arvox, but Arvox is a vocal plugin. Well, that's the way we designed it. The cool thing about Arvox is it's a very multi-talented compressor. So, yes, you might find that the manual says this was designed for vocals, but it doesn't matter when it comes to this. So let's listen to my snare. Okay, so now let's put Arvox on. Adds a bit of dirt to it because there's not much there, but so you can actually take this up quite a way and mess with it. Now, one of the things that some people will say is it's adding noise, and you'd be right. But can you hear it in the mix? When it's that extreme, yes, but when it's about there, no. So use the plugins that you've got available to you, and make the most of them. Arvox is great on guitars. It's great on drums. It's also good on vocals. Another really good one would be MV2, especially when it comes to rides. So if I take a look at two quick things and then I'll leave. Okay, so I'm gonna go MV2. So I've just taken a noise reduction plugin and MV2. So there's my ride. Bypass them both again. Put it back in the mix. Bypass them. So if you wanted it more prominent, just know what you have to do. So punch it up, but then put something simple like an NS1 straight after it. Yep, last 5 questions. I don't even know when you wrote that, but yes. The snare, it does not sound like a tom. The toms sound like this. Where are my toms? My toms, I have 2 floor toms. There's very little snare in this, but the toms sound like this. Wait for it. That's the toms. Now the toms, again, I'm just doing a teeny weeny bit of subtle EQing in there, but I don't need to do much to them. So, all right, last couple of questions. Anybody, anything? Here's to Sama. Yes, I'm sorry, you are a bit late. Just to summarize for you. Hi, I'm MPA. I'm from Waves. I've been talking about plugins. It's been amazing. Thanks for coming. Now you're all caught up. Couple of small pieces of advice for you, career-wise. Say yes to pretty much anything that puts you in front of a mixing console. I started as a coffee boy in 1988, and I was in a band, and we were playing local pubs and clubs in around Queensland, and we supported a slightly larger band one night, and one of the guys came up to me after a couple of nights playing with them, and he goes, "Do you want to come on tour?" So where are you going? This is just around the world. We're getting a bit bigger, and we're doing a world tour. I'm like, okay, but is you asking all of us or just me? No, we just need a keyboard player. So I ended up going on tour with a little band that was known as In Excess. Not sure if you're aware of them, but INXS, In Excess, and I was on the Kick tour, and the whole concept of a world tour with a band playing songs that I didn't know was scary, horrifically scary, but I did it. Then came back and realized that I was too short to be a rock star, probably a bit too podgy, and didn't have the best voice. So I started in a studio, and the next time I said yes was when I was assistant at a studio in Sydney. The chief engineer was sick that day, the chief mix engineer, and I was messing around in the studio. And the receptionist rings through and goes, "The guy from Sony here, can you come out?" I came out. This guy looks at me and he goes, "Are you the chief mix engineer here?" And I thought about it for about a millisecond and went, "Yes." Just technically that day I was. And he goes, "Great. Last minute session, can you fit us in?" "No problem. Yes, I can." So 20 minutes later, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant walk in. And I spent 3 days doing a special acoustic album version of an album they did called No Quarter. That was 1992. So now that guitar there behind me, end of the first day, Jimmy Page ran out of strings for his guitar. 2 days before, I had bought that guitar on the wall from the Bondi Beach music shop. Didn't know how to play it. And he goes, "Can I use your guitar?" "No problem." So he used that guitar for the session for the next day and a half while we were recording. And unbeknownst to me, he signed it for me. So that guitar sits on my wall now as a reminder to me that you have to say yes to things even when you're not comfortable, or even if you're not sure. You can really pull it off, because saying yes and pushing yourself into that mode of, okay, I'm going to find out if I can do this, is what gets you ahead in life and what gets you ahead creatively. So say yes, go what the hell, do it, and push yourself forward. So life is all about adventures, friends. Music is a big one. Audio is a big one. It's a lot of fun. What is the peak in the master you would maintain during a mix? Let's go back a bit, shall we?
I hear voice in the shadows.
That, basically. I don't go any higher.
See your face.
That's a hot mix for me.
in the crowd.
But this is a really full session, and those pads are really, really big, and I like them. But I don't go any bigger than that. So one of the things that I also say when it comes to that is ask your mastering engineer what they want. My friend Piper Payne, who's a mastering engineer in Nashville, mastered this for me when I did it, when I needed it mastering. And what she said to me was send one the level that you mix at, and then send one 2 dB down, 2 dB up, send one with vocals normal, vocals hot, vocals low. And that's what I did. So when it comes to what you're mixing and where you want to take it as far as mastering goes, make sure you talk to your mastering engineer and communicate with them and find out what they want you to mix it at, because they're the ones who will put the final polish on. Can you talk about linear phase EQ? Tony played Need You Tonight and Suicide Blonde a lot as a club DJ. Good songs, mate. I played them on stage. I played them on stage at Madison Square Gardens, Birmingham NEC, Wembley, in front of thousands of people. Freaky as a teenager. Linear phase EQ. So linear phase EQ is, firstly, it takes up a bit more CPU than a normal paragraphic EQ. Linear phase EQ gives you the ability to be a lot more tweaky with what you're doing. Most of the time, I will use linear phase EQ to fix problems on a 2-bus mix after I've mixed it, right? If I need to try and get in there and fix something that I can't get to in the actual session. Linear phase EQ gives you the ability over paragraphic to really dig into a frequency without really affecting all of its cousins. So it is more tweaky. It does take more DSP or more CPU, and it is something that is probably point blank, people, if you're watching, we could probably do a whole webinar on the difference between paragraphic and linear phase. But yes, it's definitely something you use to tweak more than something like this Q10. Q10 though is probably still to this day the industry standard when it comes to any EQ for anything. How do you balance? Jan Madeline, how do I balance what specifically? And oh wow, Point Blank School speaks French. Bonsoir. And yeah, so let's find out what Jan, what you mean by balance. I will wait. I'm patient. Bidoo, bidoo, bidoo. You want me to dance? I can dance. I'm really bad at dance. Let's not dance. So, while I'm seeing if Jan Madeline says... I love live chats. Okay. What else? While compression, how do you change balance between... Okay, cool. Okay. So I'm gonna close this session and open it again because that plugin is annoying the hell out of me. I have no idea how to get rid of that plugin. That was funny. Okay. No. I don't want to talk about auto-tune. Seeing all my folders. It's actually quite a large session when you think about it. There's a lot going on. While it's opening though, one of the things, how do you get groove in drum machine tracks? That one's actually easy. Here. I can talk about that easily enough. So let's talk for a second though about balance. So now one of the things that comes into play doesn't have so much to do with plugins, but has a ton to do with how you organize your session. So like, let's go back over here to the right hand side. So I have my vocals, but then let's go to non-narrow view. I have my master. Talked about that. It's a volume knob for me. Submaster, it's where the magic happens. I have my music mix. I have my drum bus. And then I have a vocal mix. But then I have two faders, which make the world of difference. I have a vocal VCA and a music VCA. Now, if my education serves me correctly, VCA stands for voltage controlled amplitude. Now, technically, these aren't VCAs, these are DCAs, but I'm 50, so I'm going to call it what I want. Where it makes a difference, though, is when you need to decide how dynamically things are being affected overall. So, say, for example, let's go back to narrow mix for a second. And so there's my vocal VCA and there's my music VCA. So if I move, assuming as all the vocals are right here, if I move my vocal VCA, you'll see them all go down evenly. So it's not just one big group. It's all down nice and even. So I can make sweeping adjustments that dynamically change the track without actually going in and tweaking things. If I'm happy with the sound of the compressors, I can actually choose what's going on with VCAs just as well as I can with plugins. Doing it with both, though, and mixing and matching is a nicer way to go. Let me explain what I mean by muting the vocals and messing with the music. So here we have... That's right, I gotta change the volume a bit. Starts nice and quiet, doesn't it? Okay. So, let's go somewhere a teeny bit busier. Let's go... Now, I'm going to pull this fader down. Actually, there's one track that doesn't seem like it's quite doing what I want it to do. Going. There's always one. Music mix. So when you have something like that, then go into modify, alter. Thank you. Okay. All right. Beautiful. Okay. So now that should act exactly the way I want it to. So. Okay, so that's my music. So this is all going into the compressor. So, yeah, so it's all going into the F6. So let's change that F6 and let's change it for the Abbey Road Mastering Live, which is low latency. So, and let's go to Dave Darlington, Pop Midside Widener. Let's take the makeup gain down. Let's take the ratio to about 50. Let's spread it just a bit and... Okay, so now listen to what happens as I move things up. Remember, with the VCA, everything is relative, so it's not like you're locked into it. Watch that gain reduction. A lot of the time when it comes to how much I compress, I will mess around and experiment with the VCA before I'll start adjusting separate compressors because I want to know how the mix sounds, dynamically and undynamically altered. At this point, though, Jan, it's a case of, for me anyway, it's a case of I want to get the feel of the track down before I start messing with too much compression or altering compression. But when I do, it will be pretty much on a basis of everything rather than just individual. When it comes to individual tracks, one of the things I said earlier on is make sure you do it not soloed. If you're doing things soloed, then you are missing the point because nothing gets listened to in solo actually in a track. It's all part of a bigger picture. Pink noise match. I don't do that much. Free. I think your name's Free, but anyway, so I don't really do that. I think I've done that like twice in my entire career, and been mixing for the 30 odd years. Webinar of tape machine emulations. Yep, we could do that. How do you deal with phase problems? I actually try and avoid phase problems very, very early on. A lot of the time, phase problems can be introduced with too much processing in plugins. So that's another reason why a lot of the time I'm very particular about which plugins I use and how many I use. A lot of the time, what you'll also find is I'm using a plugin when I'm recording and I'm printing through a plugin, but I'm not using it in the mix. I'm a real component of get it right. If you're recording it, get it right on the way in so you have less to do on the way out. The term fix it in the mix should be banned from any phrase dictionary ever because it will bite you in the ass. When you do the final mix down, what's the difference between the kick and sub in dBs? Being honest, in this track, I have absolutely no idea other than feel. It's like feel to me is everything. Because it's the way I learnt. It's like everything is about feel. Now, here's one thing that I will tell you. When I'm mixing, no one can be in here. I'm married to a Cuban, and Cubans, however much I love my wife, Cubans can be quite loud. So my wife knows that when I'm mixing, it's like this room is acoustically treated, but everything is very, very quiet to the point when I mix a track off, I want to hear it just above 0. So I can hear exactly what the frequencies are doing. Because think about it. You are background noise. I'm background noise. Our music is listened to in cars, on trains, in headphones, behind babies crying, behind traffic, behind office work, behind school work. There's so much going on in front of music that getting to know the fact that when you are mixing, that you are one part of all the frequencies that people are listening to, and you have no control how they're listening to them. You have to listen at the quietest possible volume so that you can hear what all the frequencies are doing. Everything sounds good loud, but if you mix it really low, it will sound better loud. That's the last piece of advice I'm going to give you today. So, yes, MVOX. I record mainly synths and drum machines. This apply to us. Yes, absolutely it does. There's so many synths and drum machines in this, it's not funny. Well, it could be funny, but it's not funny because it's not really a joke. It's just music. 3/4 of this is samples, or and then 1/4 of it is recorded in instruments. Most of the samples, you'll notice, don't actually have processing on them. I'm processing, pardon me, on the bigger picture. Because if you dynamically alter too many different things about samples, you bring up the noise floor, you make them messy, and then you have to fix what you've just created. So there you go. All right, thanks everybody. Thank you for watching. I went a bit longer than people expected, probably. So I'm sure this will be available for offline viewing. I appreciate you guys. I'm always here to support you guys. They know how to get hold of me if you want to get hold of me and have me listen to a mix or give you some honest opinions. And I believe I'm doing another one with you guys at some point, so happy to do that and looking forward to it. So point blank, people, you asked me to tell you when I'm coming off. I am turning off this stream in 5, 4, 3, 2,